Not my normal, but there's a big radio station in Sacramento that does a festival.
Yeah.
And so there were like five acts and all this tents and vendors. I rode a mechanical bull for the first time ever.
Did you break your hip?
Pretty sure I lasted 12 seconds.
Definitely a high for you. I was gonna say this reminds me of you talking about your dad skiing at an old age, you getting on a bull.
Yeah, this is the equivalent. This is my Fu Manchu. Welcome to the Prestige-ish Media Podcast. Today we're going to be covering The Boys Season 5, Episode 6, Though the Heavens Fall. I'll be your host for this podcast, Dan McNair. With me is a fact job, but he's talent. So there's no surprise there. And he's living off day-old noir nuggets in the freezer. It's Craig Lake. Craig, how you feeling, buddy?
Good. I thought this was a good week for the boys. I think this was the boys at its best. And yeah, good week for the show.
So what rating did you give it then?
I've got it at an 8, and I think this is the result of an episode that has a very clear direction. I think they were moving it. A couple of the episodes I've complained about this season and a bulk of last season, I felt were a little aimless or just burning time, but you could tell with 3 episodes left, they're actually, I would still say maybe it doesn't feel like the last third of an episode, but it felt like a solid episode of TV that there was a point to it. It wasn't just Walter White with a fly trapped in a room for budget. So yeah, I gave it an 8. What about you?
I gave it an 8.2, and I agree with you in a lot of ways here. And for listeners or viewers that might be new to us, we don't really compare notes before we sit down. Craig could have loved an episode, I might have hated it, vice versa. It's happened a lot. But I think a lot of times we aren't in the same neighborhood. We might send a joke or something if we know the other person has seen it. But by and large, when we unpack this, it's pretty much fresh, and we don't really know what to expect from our host or co-host. There has been a lot of online chatter that has paralleled, I think, some of our feelings for season 5 so far. I don't know that we'd go so far to label what we've experienced as filler episodes or bottle episodes. And there has been like a lot of calling that out and a lot of crypty clapback. But I do think that we both agree that even though it might not be a wasted episode, things aren't developing in a funnel down the chute type way towards the end at the pace that we'd like to have closure and get this thing on board. I do think this episode helped go that direction, but are you aware of that chatter or does that ring true for you?
So full disclosure, we've been covering this show on our side for about 2.5 years. I had an ex that had kind of introduced me to one episode, so I was anti the boys right off the bat. And so I hadn't really watched it. So I feel like I originated Kripke chatter and hate, if there is any. To
Just
me, I'd never heard anybody talk about him but me. And if people are echoing that, it makes me feel better that I'm not just coming out of left field. What I have seen, I've just more recently gotten the boys algorithm, I think, because we're posting more on social feeds and I'm maybe on some of those feeds a little bit more, just even by default. Sometimes I don't realize I'm in the prestigious feed. Why am I getting TMZ news or whatever? But from that, I have seen some comments like the show should have ended at Hero Gasm, or some of those things about the show being a little more aimless lately. And I think it's fair to say, I think last season, and I think there's been a few filler episodes this season, but once again, this was a directional episode. And when this show has a purpose and a direction that's plot driven to the overall arching story and not just Kripke's story of the week, I think it's a lot more effective. And I think that's what you saw here. And I think the fact that there is that chatter, probably you don't want to ever, I don't think it's positive to only evaluate your own beliefs based on how the internet reacts. But I think me and you aren't always on the same page. We definitely have different tastes. Certainly we're more in the ballpark than not. But I think if me and you feel a certain type of way and there's some people on the internet feeling some type of way, the only people I can imagine not feeling that type of way are like the hardcores. And even somebody like that, from you talking to Greg and some of the feedback you gave me from him, kind of sounded like he might have been on that page too. So at that point, who are you really? What's the audience at that point? But I think
Yeah,
this
it's funny
was
you mentioned that. Yesterday, we actually had a phone conversation, and the text he sent me leading up to it was like, I think I figured out what I don't like about this show.
but I do think this was a good, like, to me, this is the boys at its best. And if they could keep this type of momentum, and I think that's in some ways the show's a victim of its own success. I think because the first three seasons were on such rails that everything was driving to something. And so it just there wasn't as much chance for let up. Whereas season four was just aimless. I don't know what to say. And we've got a little bit of that this season. I think they had 6 episodes for plot and they had to do 8, and that's what we're seeing. But this was a good episode.
Okay, so let's get into it. And I think it also starts strong. It starts with the return of Legend, which, if you listen to our previous podcast, we actually surmised, hey, they referenced him. Maybe the Paul Reiser character is going to come back. And we saw him, it was back in like season 3. I think it was the first Soldier Boy season. And he was, I think, a little slimier there. But between Stranger Things and The Boys, like, I really appreciate Paul Reiser these days, is what it's feeling like. We've recently gone back through and did a full watch of Stranger Things. And seeing Paul Reiser here, he's our first of 2 Stranger Things actors in the Boys universe that pop up this episode. He's working undercover. He's trying to keep a low profile, but he's at VMC theaters that take off the AMC movie theater chain. So they're doing a lot of the in-universe jokes, but you do see the deep popcorn buckets. I wouldn't even know about popcorn bucket lore if it wasn't for you. I can't remember if it was Deadpool or Aliens or
It
what
was
it was.
probably the Dune 2 one probably started.
Okay. So did you have some appreciation with the deep popcorn bucket?
Yeah, I think my disassociation from the deep limited it, but I definitely took the nod and thought it was fair. If I didn't dislike the deep so much, probably would have I might have appreciated a Starlight popcorn bucket a little bit more than a deep popcorn bucket, but you take what you can get.
And so, what were your thoughts seeing this like tiny character, but kick off the episode? And I think in a lot of ways, he held the episode together.
Yeah, this is one of those things where the foreshadowing changes the dynamic a bit. If they don't foreshadow it, it's more of a surprise, but is it too much of a surprise? But I really like the Legend as a character. You mentioned liking Paul Reiser in these 2 roles are obviously 2 very different roles, but I still think he provides that elder statesman role any which way you go. And so, yeah, I think it's fair to say he's aged well. I never disliked Paul Reiser, but I never spent a lot of time with him. I'd assume that's probably the same with you, is just lack of we weren't big mad about you fans, but I always generally thought he seemed like an okay guy. But yeah, I thought it was great seeing him. I did want to say in the popcorn lore, bucket lore, there is a big thing that's come out this week. There's a 40-ounce He-Man sword that you can drink out of that will be coming to theaters a month from now. So that might sucker me in, but always a fan of the novelty popcorn buckets and stuff. But yeah, Paul Reiser was a good addition. I assume same from you, but was your take on him?
It was refreshing, and I think just the fact that we recognized it last week and it delivered, it felt good. So basically, Mother's Milk has tracked him down. He's trying to keep a low profile, but the goal here is to get to Bombsight. And so the idea is that they're going to leverage or figure out how to get to Bombsight using the legend and his contacts. And we find out through the course of the episode that you don't go straight to Bombsight, but you can get to him through Golden Geisha, who they have referenced before. We do get some of the Seven type storyline is that we saw Homelander said we were going to have to pull the troops back. So in this world, they're worried about petroleum shortage, the Mid East shutting down. So there's a storyline where the Deep has to promote this Alaskan pipeline and how safe it is and eco-friendly. So they drop a seed on that storyline right there. Ultimately, I like where this gets to, but at first I kind of just shrugged at it. Any impression from you?
Yeah, I think this is a case where the juice was finally worth the squeeze. They got something out of it. So in that regard, it didn't full episode. I thought it was a decent move or angle for the episode.
Okay. Back in Boysville, they loosely hinted to this plan, but it wasn't really where my interest was that they're going to drop off like an air freshener, a deodorant box, a hand sanitizer, or something else at the church of funeral place slash every presidential stump speech. They're going to hide something in there that's basically designed to take out Homelander. To me, it was like if you blink, you missed it, that this was like their important plan because it seemed like more the bomb site direction was where everything was headed. So Legend is dropping lots of references. He likes to do some of these sick 70s sex things. I think in the past, in season three, he talked about being balls deep in Golden Geisha while Marlon Brando was balls deep in him. He has some other drops here. One's like a steamy sex scene with Eric Estrada, and there's something about Lorenzo Lamas. Like all these characters from the 80s are just funny to think about. But he tells them about this soup retirement home called the Villages. And that's basically where they got to go to confront Golden Geisha. Kamiko perks up because this is apparently like her hero. She wants to meet her, and they do make the reference that name doesn't sound racist at all. What's your take? What are your impression of these developments?
I just think Kamiko all season's been pretty positive. I was gonna say, I'm imagining like this is where I text you. I think I know what Greg doesn't like about this show, but I'm wondering if it's the like, hey, we got to find this thing this episode or something like that, just the point to point nature of it. And so I could see that being a downfall of this in every episode. But we always have these quests of how we're going to get to what we're going to get to and then what we're going to do with the thing once we get it. And that is a bit of a formula. I thought they've done a poor job up till now, and so I want to say that this job's done the best episode of explaining the Huey, Starlight, Kamiko, Frenchie dynamic and where all that's going and the pros and cons of wanting to continue to live. And so I'm the old folks home plays a big part of that. And so I just want to say that's been a tougher thing for me to buy or understand, like why these people wouldn't want to live, or I just feel like the episode did the best job explaining that. I don't know
They
that.
could get to the point there after what we, having viewed five seasons of this, just seem like an eye roll in these relationships. Can't they just get along for 10 minutes?
Yeah, and I don't think they gave enough reason this season. They didn't earn it, but this episode they did. I would say Golden Geisha she didn't light the screen on fire. She didn't add much for me. But we get to the finish line and it progresses a plot, and so that's a positive on my side.
We have talked about some of the Fun Boys different satires that I really appreciated in the first couple seasons, and it seems to have dropped off. I will give him credit in this episode at the old folks' home that seems to be like Vought Classic TV is what's playing through the night. And there you do get a couple, I think, fun parodies of 70s TV with soups. I did enjoy these. There's a show called Engine Number Nine, where it's basically a whitewashed Native American that can smell the fire before the fire chief can. And it was filmed very much in a Charlie's Angels type style. You also get a commercial where we're introduced to Bombsight, where they're talking about pills that Vought put out in the 50s like a mother's little helper, but in objectifying women's figures and weight control and stuff like that. In this episode, they finally seem to do good by me in this category. So I'll just lump them all together. And it does give you a chance to see Bombsight first. I think there was another 70s TV show in there somewhere too. But do you have any response to that element?
I have never been as high on a lot of this stuff as you have, but I have had my moments. Brave Maeve's Muff Diving Castle or whatever it is. But what got me with it was that they cycled it back around where it wasn't engine number nine, one of the old people in that was like fighting them at the end. And so that's where it paid off well for me was the full circle nature of them battling these old soups that were watching themselves on TV. I did think that was a pretty good nod there.
So back at Vought Tower, we get Sage versus Ashley. You see these two on screen, and I kind of like start to downshift in my attention a little bit. But basically, Sage chokes out Ashley so that she can get to back Ashley because she wants him to use her mind reading power to figure out she doesn't trust Homelander and Soldier Boy. She drops this line for the first time here. People are so predictable. And I think she uses it a couple times. She uses it with Mother's Milk later. And it just sets up her character for this episode as thinking she's got it all figured out. One thing we do notice roundabout here, might not have been in this particular scene, she's got a little notebook with Brave Maeve on it that we saw in a previous season, but the camera does focus on it briefly. It's her rainbow schoolgirl with Brave Maeve on the back. And it made me wonder if this, much like the legend drop in the last episode, might be a Maeve hint.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's one we could have done without. But at the same instance, this is a notebook that she did have previously. So I'm sure that's how the writers excused it in their head. But it just, I think, unnecessary to foreshadow what I think most people know is coming, but you start giving it hints. You do something like that, and it's okay. If you don't do it, you're a piece of shit. If you do it, we already know it's coming. So
Yeah, it seems
thanks.
like low-hanging fruit.
I would
So,
say probably not the first time Ashley's heard this, but back Ashley, definitely the better of the two Ashleys, in
jeez.
more ways than one at this point.
Careful with that. Careful.
But
Troublesome indeed.
would say
So,
if you're trying to get a massage, thinking of the Ashley Sage scenes are the best way to get through it. Baseball, cold showers, Sage and Ashley. Go ahead. I turn it
speaking
down.
of massages, let's get back to Golden Geisha. So she's at the old folks' home. Legend walks in. He does try to implore Golden Geisha to come to their side, and so does Kamiko. Doesn't work. At some point, he makes a reference to I was close with her. Woody what was before Sun Yi with Mia Farrow or something like that. I know you love a Sun Yi reference. Did that tickle your fancy at all?
No, I think that situation is a little too weird even for me. But and then you've got the Asian angle of it almost makes it more uncomfortable. I think the fact that Kimiko is so involved in it makes it okay. I think the fact that she looked up to Golden Geisha is fun. I just love Kimiko's energy this season, but still it's these jokes are generally funny. 7 out of 10 land, and we all get a good laugh. And Paul Reiser sells it for sure. So, what was your take on the Sunyi reference?
I just know that you've made that reference a good handful of times over all the different podcasts we've done. But here we are in the writer's room once again.
Yeah,
Imaginary points given. We get a pretty useless scene, I think, with Starlight and Huey cloud gazing. Our friend Greg seemed to comment that it was like two kids doing improv theater. Like, why are we getting this in the final season of the show? I don't know that it really moved their relationship or established a lot. It may be a wasted scene.
yeah. The only place I'd push back is we've gotten very few moments where you care about these characters' relationships. And I do think there was a cloud gazing scene early with them. I feel like maybe
Might have
CU.
been, yes.
And so just that callback, it's oh, I remember when I might have like seeing these two people together. So I didn't mind it as much, but I totally think it's valid to say in the last three episodes of TV series that it may feel like filler. It would have been much more appropriate in any of the last five that we were dicking around. But yeah, I could get that. But for me, obviously I like Starlight. I've come to Huey okay. Who, by the way, is married to the senator lady, the
Yes,
mom.
yeah, recently,
Yeah. I'm
and
forgetting her name, but
Naomi
Vivian
or
Via
Vicky,
Real.
I think.
But yeah, they're married, which that's funny. But so good for Huey.
Yeah, our little Huey's all grows up. And one of our friend Greg's points was like, you're supposed to care about these characters and you get a scene like this, and then you get them acting just as deplorably as the villains. And I get it, that's part of the boys' thing, but these good guys decide that the only real way out of this is they're going to have to kidnap Golden Geisha from the old folks' villages, and so it sets up this battle where Butcher, Mother's Milk, and Frenchie raid in there at night. They try and kidnap her, and they wind up in a battle against Hot Flash, the old lady with the flame on hands, the engine guy, who I think his actual character name is Big Apple Chief or something like that. And then the typical boys character whose only title is the guy with the balls. And basically, he's flinging his nuts around like nunchucks.
Now, coincidentally, is it Big Apple Chief the name of that trans girl you dated? Hey,
That was
um,
Adam's apple chief.
so I was halfway zing through this and I was seeing some of what was going on, but I didn't totally understand. And then I see the guy's balls just hanging out, and it's just such a boys thing. Is it Frenchie that walks in and sees the balls on a rope, or whoever walks into the scene and is just like, what the fuck?
I think Frenchie arrives way too late, but there is, I think, a boys staple where I think with the penis dude that they killed, I
Yeah.
think Butcher always comes up against them and then six mother's milk on them. And so
Okay.
there's a point where Butcher looks at mother's milk like, oh, you got to take out testicle guy. And I don't think it actually plays out that way here.
Yeah, wasn't Mother's Milk and the Penis Man the one I compared to Peter and the chicken?
Yes.
But yeah, I also thought it was interesting character development this episode with Mother's Milk, and that Legend kept checking him on his character dynamics.
Yeah, he keeps saying you're becoming as big a piece of shit Butcher. And that was the only voice of reason
Yeah,
like
but
in the
it's like
show.
it's funny because it's actually been nice to see Mother's Milk at least progress as a character. And then he's you're a piece of forever doing anything different than you've been doing it for five seasons. But I thought once again, some of this stuff you can only get so far in the last three episodes of a season of television. But I thought it was interesting. It was something to happen.
Yeah, ultimately they do kidnap Golden Geisha. The plot moves along. It didn't feel like there was a ton of just lag in this. We do check in on Starlight and Huey heading to the church. They find the firecracker corpse, so they start to put some of that together. And just an odd drop that I think might wind up making a lot more sense later. There's a bunch of pictures of psychics on the wall that Homelander is collecting or obsessed with, or somehow they're using these people in a weird way. I don't know if you paused to note it, if you blinked and missed it, or if you
I
made
thought
anything
it
out of
was
it.
out of place, but now that you mention it, it's probably Mesmer, or didn't he jump off a wall, or the other mind control guy in the Soldier Boy episode, or one of the three people, or there's got to be someone in Gen V that we're not thinking of. It's Ashley certainly has that ability too, so maybe that's a thing. Who knows? But yeah, I did notice it, but I didn't have an immediate solution for it.
Yeah, I don't know what it means, but I think it's at least pertinent that they dropped it in there. They're trying to use Geisha now basically as bait to get Bombsight, and all of a sudden Sister Sage shows up. So she seems like she's moved along to the point where she's basically swapping sides. We've always known this about her, but the boys necessarily haven't seen it. And they do seem wary to trust her. Kamiko is the one that figures out Golden Geisha doesn't really want immortality, which checks to the storyline that you brought up about how Annie and her feel. And basically, she's coming from a point of seems like the V1, you don't age. Liberty didn't age. Soldier Boy hasn't aged. We meet Bombsight. He hasn't aged. And it seems like Annie and Kamiko and Golden Geisha, they don't want to watch everybody grow old and die and become depressed and that sort of thing. Do you have a side of this fence that you land on? Given the opportunity for immortality, how would you approach it?
Yeah, I think it's hard because of religion, but if you remove religion from it, I've got no problem watching people die. So, other than my dogs, I might give my dogs V1 and call it a day. But no, it's an interesting dynamic. I can get somebody really care about having the challenge with that. So, I think it's one of the fairest things they've explored, like a natural human emotion and not just pulling on someone's balls. So I give them credit
Yeah,
for
and
that.
it's an interesting moral conundrum. Would you want to be that lonely to live forever? That seems like an interesting price to pay. Craig says yes.
I'm already lonely and gonna die, so might as well live forever. Do it even a longer period of time.
He has a cold, ladies and gentlemen. It's not that serious. So we start to hop back and forth and channel surf between a handful of, I thought they were interesting and compelling storylines. We get the press conference where Deep's pipeline has burst after he went to check it out and verified it. We get this battle between O Father and Starlight as Huey and Starlight are going to hide this secret agent. And we hear part of Starlight's past with this O Father character who's also Aaron. They can't come to the same side. Ultimately, it becomes a battle between her flash power and his bad breath. But Huey steps out of the shadows with the super special virus, and they all sort to stand down and go their own way. Anything you'd like to contribute so far?
More about you talking about Deep's pipeline getting pounded. Oh, Father, maybe the least likable character this season. Where's he fall on your radar?
I think he's on my Deadpool. I'm pretty
Okay.
sure. But up to this point, he's been terrible and minor. I thought seeing this backstory with Starlight was about as good and enjoyable as he's dished out, which is not saying a lot.
Well, I'll say what I've said about Ashley many times. I don't like him and I don't like his face. But yeah, I think the only other thing to mention is Huey's gamut was a bluff because he couldn't really use the virus. So he does it to protect Starlight, but just an interesting take from him. It could have backfired, but worked out.
Yeah, you're right. It was a total bluff. Greg's point is these are supposed to be the good guys, and he's just willing to murder. But we know it's a bluff. It's not like he's actually going to do
He
it.
can't use it with Homelander not there. He could use it as a more real bluff if Homelander was in the room, but he really can't use it there.
Fair. So we get Deep's podcast is about to go. He's got Black Noir there. Black Noir gets aggressive and starts giving it to him. He says, "There's plenty of fish in the sea. Oh no, they're all dead." Deep has this weird maritime feeling where he's close to these fish. He considers them his friends. So he is beyond himself. And Noir keeps egging him on. And then the Deep turns around and kills Black Noir and adds one to your Deadpool. So what was your feeling here? You got one.
Black Noir always known to be aggressive after pounding the Deep's pipeline. But yeah, glad to get him on the death board. I don't like the Deep. I think it's tough to make him likable, but I think this was a good episode for the Deep. I think it would have been stupid if they just put the pipeline in and it accidentally broke and caused all that damage. But the fact that it was Black Noir doing it, and they've tried to paint Black Noir as almost a good guy or more likable than the Deep. So to see him do something as bad as anything, I thought was this was a good choice. Overall, I like the choice they made here.
Yeah, and some appropriate backstory. Noir in the last episode was pissed that Deep murdered Bork, and so this is his payback. In Noir's mind, it's like we're even, but the Deep is saying however many, 1.5 million versus one. And there is a little bit of a human life versus a fish's life type question. I don't know the math on that. Moving along in the episode, so Homelander finds Legend because they were on the Vought Villages video cam, and they have some interesting back and forth. Legend figures he's done for, but he does explain to Homelander what's going on here. Bombsight shows up. Did you recognize the actor?
I don't. I just recognize them from the Variety piece when they announced the prequel series. That's who he is. Who is the actor?
So he's our second Stranger Things actor. He was in season 4. He played Jason, the head of the basketball team
Oh,
that
the
was
really
Chrissy's
one we didn't
boyfriend and went
like.
after Eddie
Oh
Munson.
God, the one we hated. Okay.
Yeah. So same actor, but we have talked about how they're really trying to set up the Vought Rising show. So I'm assuming we're going to see more of this actor. His name is Mason Dye.
Yeah, he was the lead picture Variety release when they full announced the prequel prior to the episode that was going to set it up a couple episodes ago.
So there we go. We do learn at some point here about the Vought Alert necklace that Golden Geisha is wearing, which is ultimately how Homelander finds out where they all are. But Soldier Boy shows up after they lure Bombsight in because Sage has this master plan. She's under the assumption that Soldier Boy and Homelander hate each other and that this is all going to play out right. But we do get a big fight. We get a lot of action. We get flying around and special effects and all sorts of things like that. Bombsight apparently brought the V1 to the V1 fight. Sage identifies it in his pocket. So Soldier Boy and Bombsight fly away from most of the boys. And basically, Bombsight wants Geisha to live forever. She says she's not going to. And so it makes, I think, Bombsight at this point rethink what his plan was. And Soldier Boy, we know, has this power where he can basically absorb your superpowers and take them away. I think he did that to Kamiko at one point after they pulled him out of Russia.
Is that why he was struggling so much with I couldn't remember if it was that, which I think what you're saying is accurate, or
I
if
think
that's
he
why
did it to Maeve too when they flew out of the tower.
when I couldn't remember why Starlight was struggling so much with her powers. I was like, is that why all that happened? Which that may not have been. And did they ultimately re-inject Kimiko? Is that what happened?
I don't know if she just worked at it really hard. She got him back, and I think we all knew she was gonna.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, it's an interesting concept. We'll see the magic powers disappearing power.
Yeah. So it seems like Soldier Boy gets the V1, like this is the exchange, this is the deal. And all of a sudden, Homelander shows up. Soldier Boy seems to fake out Sage, the most brilliant woman in the world, or what have you. I have questions about that, but it does seem like an interesting swerve here where ultimately, like we've heard a lot about liberty. I haven't, I've just been thinking it's all Vought Rising propaganda, but ultimately it seems like they connect over this and it might make a shift in Soldier Boy's thinking to actually give Homelander a chance.
Now,
Until in typical boys fashion, next episode they hate each other again.
Now, what was it that she showed? Was it a sex tape of Homelander in Stormfront? Was it him banging her half dead corpse? What was it that was exposed that was supposed to tear them apart?
Yeah, we didn't really see it, so it's left to our imagination. Basically, Sage sets a trap to try and get them against each other. And I think when she was in his apartment, like basically in her charred out Anakin remains, I think she would give him oral.
Okay.
And there was like some sort of a disgusting boys scene about that back
Now,
whenever that happened.
ultimately, we think he killed her, even though she's immortal? Question mark.
Yeah, I think it was a euthanasia type scenario.
Yeah. So yeah, interesting. If this was episode 7 going into 8, I would think more likely Homelander took the V1, but I have a hard time believing that he took it based on that there's not more to come based on the fact that we've got 2 episodes left.
Yeah, I'm thinking somebody switched it or some sort of fake out sleight of hand type deal.
Yeah, spoiler alert for anybody that doesn't want to listen, but I don't think it's that big of a deal for Dan. I saw someone online speculate maybe that Bombsight or that Soldier Boy, like, because he's like taking the powers out of everything, maybe he took the power out of like the V1 is like a
Oh,
possibility. So who knows? But I think one of these explanations, they have to explain it away because I think if he's immortal for 2 episodes, like I'd believe he got immortality and they got to defeat him the last episode, but I don't see it happening for 2 hours. What happens to the Vought EBITDA if he takes V1 is the real question that I think we all want to
that's
know.
really the pressing question.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and like you figured it was going to be at its darkest moment right before it rebounds and comes back around the other way. That's pretty much the writing a hook I would expect from this show.
Yeah,
So
but I
we'll
do
just
think
have
it
to
is
see.
fair to ask, maybe not even for the reasons enumerated, but who are you rooting for at a point? Which luckily I think they've made Huey more likable. I think Kamiko's okay, but like they've made Butcher and even Mother's Milk isn't like a fun hang. But in
Not
like
anymore.
you got to have people to root for. And I never thought I'd say this, but maybe Sister Sage is right. Maybe they kill them all and I'll read books in my basement.
Sister Sage wins. That's what we're rooting for.
Didn't
Everybody
I
dies.
didn't see that coming as being something I'd support, but yeah, so we'll see. This episode gives me a lot of encouragement that they can deliver 2 more entertaining episodes, and I think that's all we can really ask for at this point. And yeah, it was a good episode overall.
I totally agree. Continue to stick with us. Join us next week as we continue our boys coverage. Also follow our Euphoria season 3 coverage, ongoing as well. And thanks for spending some time with us. Snap Strum.